morning.
Ma'am, I had a few questions to ask
Go ahead.
regarding what is to be submitted tonight. First thing was, after I discussed the controversies I would like to consider for my paper, the question that said the preliminary research question, like, is that the question? I mean, is that the topic that we're going to choose, or is that how we're going to present it in a topic form?
It's your sort of idea right now that can change. That's why we're calling it preliminary. So it's the answer to your research question, basically. Answer your research question, preliminary thesis.
Oh, so it's like the question that, okay, it's the answer to the research question. The preliminary research. I mean, the question that said, what general subject would you want to do research on, or would you choose to do research? What is that related to the topics we choose, or?
It's basically what is the area of research that you're doing? So is it immigration? Is it gun control, civil rights?
Okay.
You don't have to get too crazy with it. I'm just looking for a general area.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
2 questions. Anybody else? The reason these questions is I want to make sure everybody is first picking a controversy, second picking something that's going on right now, okay, a current controversy, and that you'll have probably enough research material. So I'm going to read through them, and if I see any problems, I may contact you and ask you to tweak your topic a little bit or ask you to change it. If you don't hear from me, then you're probably in good shape.
So the thing that we choose, it has to be relevant right now.
It has to be a current topic.
A current topic.
Yeah, something that's going on right now.
Okay.
And your preliminary thesis can change and may change because you haven't done research, as much research as you're going to do. And you might change your mind. That's fine. You'll just adjust your thesis statement. It's basically about coming to an informed opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, you're just answering the questions for assignment 1, the subject worksheet. I want to know what you've been looking at, what you're thinking about, why you chose it, where you think you're headed. All of these things can change, so don't sweat too much getting the right answer. I'm just looking at where you think you're heading right now from the preliminary reading you've done on your topic. And today we're going to talk about how to do more specific research. Emmeline, there's a whole worksheet called the subject worksheet. If you read the assignment, it'll have a list of questions for you. So answer all the questions for assignment 1. The subject worksheet. Okay, good. Anybody else? All right, so far we've talked about how to write, how to describe in writing. Now I want to talk about how to explain a process. Morning. So a process analysis paper can be done in two ways and usually is done for two purposes. So the one you guys are probably familiar with is directional process. That essentially means I give you directions about how to do something so you can go out there and do it. Like how to change a tire, how to cook a recipe, any of an other, how to buy a computer, how to set up a computer. So all of those things would be, I give you directions and then I expect you to be able to go out and replicate my directions. That's a directional process, okay? But in college, you will also come across informational process writing. And what that means is you're explaining how a process works so that you understand it and so you show you understand it and maybe possibly to explain it to others. So for example, in your research paper, in your topic, you might need to explain a little about how dreamers apply exceptions so they can go to college even though it's in the country illegally, okay? So you might have to are the steps, right, that you would follow to apply. And like you can't have any kind of, criminal complaint against you or it disqualifies you. So you kind of outline whatever those steps are. No, we don't necessarily expect that you're going to go out there and if I'm explaining photosynthesis, you're not going to go photosynthesize, right? But it's explaining how that process works in nature or in science or in some other way that's helpful to your paper. So you may come across both of these types of process analysis. Okay. You also might compare to, so say for instance, you wanted to compare two environmental proposals by the presidential candidates. You could explain the process that you used to decide which one was the better proposal. Okay. Now you'll notice probably that like we talked about a woman on the street, right, on Monday, and there was still a lot of description in there, right? It was a descriptive essay, but she was also telling the story. So a lot of times these things overlap and they should. So you're going to have some description in a process analysis so that we can visualize how something happens. But your purpose usually is what tells you what kind of paper it is. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to explain a process. I'm trying to give directions. It's a process paper. Am I trying to tell a story? Is the purpose the story? Then it's a story paper. You guys follow me? But it's okay to overlap all those techniques because ideally that's what we want you to do in the research paper. Is take whatever technique you need and use it in the appropriate place. Okay? So some things you keep in mind when you are doing a process are whether it is a directional process or an informational one. If it's directional, you're going to need things like materials lists, right? If you're going to tell me how to build an aquarium and I've never done it before, I have no idea what I might need, right? Or you're going to assume if the audience is all the people in here, I mean, do you guys all know how to build an aquarium? No. Some of you might, but you're going to have to assume that they might need to know exactly what the materials are. If it's a recipe, we need all the ingredients. And we need specifics. Don't tell me to bake it in a big pan. My idea of a big pan might be different, right? So tell me to bake it in a 9x13 pan. Or 12-inch skillet, So description is important to explaining processes. Okay. Tips and warnings. These also help your ethos or your credibility with your reader, because if you show us that you know a process well enough to give us sort of shortcuts or good tips for doing something, warnings about what not to do that you have done, and So, you know, make sure you monitor the temperature or your oven might start smoking, you know, or line the bottom with aluminum foil so it catches any drippings. That gives us even more trust in you because it shows that you've had experience with the process. Okay. So if you're doing something like a directional process, you want to give us those tips and warnings. If you're trying to explain a process, first you have to convince us in the intro that we need to know it. We need a motivation for learning this process, right? So will it save me money? Will it improve my life some way? You know? So I had a student who did a directional paper on how to do CPR. In the introduction, she let us know that 80% of the time, if you end up doing CPR on somebody, it's generally a friend or a family member, right? Because who hangs out with those people more? We do. So if you like your friends and family, that might be motivation to learn CPR, right? So that was in her introduction and gave us motivation to go on and pay attention to our process and really learn what we need to learn. All right. Any questions so far? I would like you to read the process chapter Monday, subjects and strategies. And it's going to go over a lot of what I'm talking about. And I've talked about organization being crucial, all of these, but it's especially important in a process because if you get steps out of order, like if you tell me to crack an egg and put it in, and the next sentence is, but first, I'm screwed. Because you can't really get the egg out, right? If I was supposed to do something first, and I've already put the egg in, I know, you're supposed to read all the directions before you do it. Who has time for that, right? I need a good set of directions that tells me step by step what to do in the correct order. You know, I'm trying to herd cats and keep them from climbing in the oven, and I need a good clear set of instructions if I'm cooking something. Same with any process that you're trying to do. It helps us also if you describe what it should look like. At this point, it should look like this. Compare it to things that we are familiar with so that you can shed light on the unfamiliar equipment, or ingredients. All right, does anybody like to cook? You, Reagan? Lizzie?
Occasionally.
Sometimes? Yeah. Yeah, I go through like baking, sessions. I watch
Baking is fun.
Is it?
Yeah.
Alexa, yes, good question. The Opposing Viewpoints website is probably the best one for looking at current controversies. But if you're not sure, ask me, or you can ask a librarian if you need a quicker answer. I'm going to show you guys where to access all the library help today. Yeah, you just pick one out of the two topics that you chose. So yeah, recipes can be really stressful if they're not written well. And I mean, if you've ever run across cooks out there, recipes that are written like where everybody at your church or the Rotary Club or some organization that's raising money with one of those recipe books, they usually have everybody write up their own recipes, right? And submit them, and they just publish them as is. But sometimes there are problems with those. So for example, they'll accidentally leave out ingredients, or they'll have like a list of ingredients at the top, but then 3 other ingredients will appear in the instructions. Have you ever had that happen to you? Like I usually make sure I have everything in the ingredients list, but if new stuff appears and I don't have it, well, that's a problem, right? Or, yes, I got a recipe book from a church down in Gideon, Missouri. Is anybody familiar with the boot heel? I went to school in Cape Girardeau, Southeast Missouri State. So they just have some different terminology. So somebody was like, yeah, add a stick of oleo. Does anybody know what oleo is? I didn't.
Butter?
It is. It's like a brand name for margarine, like Parquet sticks, right?
I just guessed.
You guessed correctly. I guessed too, because of the context, right? But it can be confusing, right? If you're not sure. Oh, and then someone said, then just add a cup of sweet milk to, it was like a pie crust recipe. Anybody know what sweet milk is?
I got no idea.
I guessed too. I guessed wrong. Bad.
Isn't it evaporated milk?
Say that again?
Isn't it evaporated milk? Is sweet milk?
It's regular milk. They're differentiating buttermilk, apparently. Some of the older ladies down there use that term. I thought it meant sweetened condensed milk. So then my pie crust had a really high sugar content. So guess what happened when I put it in the oven? Charcoal, right? High sugar content, high baking temperature. It was ugly. Yeah. So yeah, they just call regular milk sweet milk. I could have used evaporated milk probably. Yeah. I did find this cool article. Let me share my screen with you guys. Where she's talking about the importance of being precise in recipes. Kitchen nightmares, why poorly written recipes drive me nuts. So, now this is a nitpicky English teacher thing. We're like, combine the whole milk, condensed milk, and evaporated milk together. Well, do you really need to like combine together? You know, you can just, stir together or something like that, but combine means together, right? So that would be an editing thing. Not as big a deal. I was instructed to cool the cake and then fill with milk filling, by which the writer apparently meant to pour the milk mixture over the cake. But filling is kind of a weird way to say pour over, right? So these, yeah, some of my pet peeves are the same as hers, which is list the ingredients in the order they'll be used. And also, like, don't tell me it's sweet milk, tell me it's like 2% milk or whole milk or evaporated milk or sweetened condensed milk. Then I won't have to guess, right? Don't call it oleo, call it margarine or butter if it's supposed to be butter. Warn me if I can't use margarine or if it'll have a problem, right? Giving time and visual clues. Visual clues are also a big part, not just of recipes, but for any process that you're describing. Cook the onions, stirring occasionally until they begin to soften or turn. Sometimes they'll say turn translucent. So there's an element of description, right? So tell me it should be a 9x13 pan. Tell me it should be all-purpose flour or unsalted butter instead of, because the butter comes salted, unsalted. Okay. So I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're struggling to follow instructions for something that you've never done before, good instructions will be specific and clear. And if there's some unusual ingredient or material, like tell us where to get it. I also had somebody who wrote a paper on making her own chainmail because she would go to medieval fairs, and that stuff's expensive. And basically chainmail is just making little tiny links and putting them together. So she told us where to get all of the materials. She's like, your local Home Depot will have most of the stuff that I'm talking about. Okay. So just remember when you are describing these processes, you may have to also define terms. Okay. If there's a lot of professions have their own jargon. So if you're using words that only the people who already know what they're doing know, then you're going to confuse anybody who's trying to learn it. Does anybody have to train people? Like you had a job where you had to explain to people how to do things? Or yeah,
I did.
you did.
Yeah, I was the lifeguard manager.
Did you have any special terms that you guys tended to use?
I guess for the equipment and stuff, but not necessarily. I mean, CPR, is just the abbreviation. And then I think that'd be about it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the equipment has special names, right? That everybody uses to refer to them and that you have to explain. So yeah, you have to be clear with your instructions or somebody who's new, and then you have to say, does this person know how to turn on a computer? Where do I need to start if I'm explaining how to use a computer? Can they turn it on, or should I start there, right? So those are just some things you have to consider. Always consider audience. We talked about that in the pre-writing stage. Level of knowledge of your topic. This applies to everything. But you may have to define terms that are specific to a profession or just to a specific job. We assume people know how to do things. So let's look at the essay, Why Leaves Change Color, where she's just explaining the process they go through very poetically, right? So I really love, the language that she's using here. The stealth of autumn catches one unaware. I think I may have said this way back at the beginning of class, but sometimes one of the reasons to study literature, right, is because we recognize ourselves or we learn something new about other people. But one of the things you should try to do is slow down and appreciate really good language. And I think this is a case where you should do that because she's got some just gorgeous description in here. And if you rush through it, you miss the pretty. So you put on your fancy voice in your head and you read it like it deserves to be read. Like,
It really was nice to read. Like I read it at like 5 a.m. It was really soothing.
It is, it's very, because this time of year, I just think the tone of it reminds me of this time of year. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely.
What does she mean when she says the stealth of autumn catches one unaware? Was that a goldfinch perching in the early September woods? Just the first turning leaf? What do you guys think? Does fall sneak up on you?
Oh no. Not literally, but
Yeah, of course, I'm personifying.
She's just saying that, it's kind of like unpredictable and stuff.
I find when I'm busier, like one day it's like my attention level. Like one day I'll walk out and just maybe one leaf is turned. And then 2 days later I go outside and I'm like, whoa, everything seems like it's just exploded into flames.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of what she's getting at. If I'm paying more attention, it depends on how much time I have in the fall. Usually not a lot because I'm teaching and doing other things, but yeah. Is that a red-winged blackbird or sugar maple closing up shop for the winter? Keen-eyed as leopards, we stand still and squint hard, looking for signs of movement. Early morning frost sits heavily on the grass and turns wire into a string of stars. I mean, it's just gorgeous, right? Can't you just picture a frosted over, string of barbed wire? part of being a good writer is being able to imagine what you're reading so that you can do the same thing in your own writing, right? So steal good techniques from good writers. On a distant hill, a small square of yellow appears to be a lighted stage. That's such a cool image, right? At last, the truth dawns on us. Fall is staggering in right on schedule with its baggage of chilly nights, macabre holidays, and spectacular, heart-stoppingly beautiful leaves. Yeah, who likes Halloween? I'm a big Halloween fan. Anybody else? Oh, and just like the sensory information, right? The frost has got the sense of cold. You've got the light. Soon the leaves will start cringing on the trees. What kind of figurative language is that? The leaves are cringing and roll up in clenched fists before they actually fall off. What kind of figurative language? Yeah, personification. Good, Mary. So first, she kind of sucks us in with this beautiful description, you know, about fall sneaking up on us. First, there will be weeks of gushing color, and then she's got the sound, dry sea pods rattle like tiny gourds. So remember the sensory information? So even though that she's explaining a process, she's still using description to make it interesting. Sunlight rules most living things with its golden edict, right? Again, personification. Sunlight cannot literally rule something. Okay. Soon after the summer solstice, a tree reconsiders its leaves. Again, trees are not thinking, so she really likes the personification technique. In the dog days of summer, the tree begins pulling nutrients back into its trunk, tears down, gradually chokes off its leaves. And then she starts getting into the scientific, you know, a layer of cells forms, scars over, cuts off the chlorophyll, right? Stops photosynthesizing. You know, animals can leave, hibernate, store food, but where can a tree go? It survives by dropping its leaves, right? And by the end, only a few fragile threads of fluid-carrying xylem hold leaves to their stems. I mean, she's like poetically explaining this. So she's got the clear process, right? She starts back here. First, this is what happens. When the days get shorter after summer solstice, right, longest day of the year, it starts pulling back the nutrients, scarring over, right? Then she's talking about what happens to the actual leaf. So she has the clear order, right? The clear progression. Now, she obviously does not. What kind of process is this? Directional or informational? She's giving us directions or explaining how a process works. What do you think, Colton? Informational, what you're saying? Yeah, she doesn't actually expect us to go turn colors in the fall. She's giving us information about how the scientific process works. There are only certain parts of the United States and China where the leaves get as brightly colored, and she explains, after she tells us why the leaves reveal their real colors after they stop photosynthesizing. So it's kind of fascinating that the leaves are actually all different colors, but they're filled with this chemical that makes them all green until they stop photosynthesizing. So it's the combination of weather here that causes the leaves to be as vivid as they are in the United States and in China. You have a certain thing like rain. There's a certain cycle that's supposed to give you the best leaf color. Fall sunlight when it's strong, right? And then she's got this great detail. Elms, weeping willows, ancient ginkgos all grow radiant yellow. Not just yellow, right? Radiant yellow. Bottlebrush buckeyes, cottonweeds, and tall keening poplars.
This prose. I'm sorry. No, I was just gonna say that this prose really is beautiful. I really like it. It just pops out. You can very easily imagine it in your head.
Yeah.
Very digestible.
That is what the best description does. Guys, steal this stuff. The words that she's using and the way she's framing it and showing us what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Steal it. Did any?
Visual.
Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just saying, like, visual storytelling is key in film and animation and all that stuff. But I don't really see the same like talked about for prose and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So.
She's trying to entertain as well as inform because she can keep you sort of mesmerized.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully you'll keep reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did anything surprise you about the process? Did you learn anything new? Did you guys know that this is what happens to leaves in the fall? Or starting in the summer, actually.
I kind of knew, but it didn't really matter because I was just so mesmerized by her descriptions that I didn't care if I already knew about some of this.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And then she even goes beyond it, like when we're getting into this section, to why do we call it the fall, right? Well, it comes from an Old English word, right? And also leaves fall off the trees, She's reminded of the fall in the Garden of Eden, right? When human beings lost God's favor. And so she talks about all the associations. We have jumping in leaves, right? And then she goes back to how do they actually fall off the trees? Okay. So she's got the whole romance of it. Okay, Alexa, you can ask me about those. I accepted, you should be able to view the answers to the questions to see. And I accepted some more generous interpretations on some, like when she's talking about, when I asked what other fall does it remind her of, I was looking for Garden of Eden. But I also accepted if you were talking about the Old English word for fall. And then again, just the description is so great. The light breeze and the leaves are airborne. They glide and swoop, rocking in invisible cradles. They're all wing and may flutter from yard to yard on small whirlwinds or updrafts, swiveling as they go. They rise up and fly like soap bubbles, balloons, birds. They remind us the end of a season is capricious, as is the end of life. Right? She just got like great texture to her writing. Does that make sense? She also compares it to things we might know about, like if you're a pilot and the falling leaf. That makes me think of a science fiction. Oh, shucks. Serenity. Anybody watch the movie Serenity? Like a leaf on the wind. So she's going through this to explain to us how it happens. What do you think? Why is she telling us about this process? What is the point she wants to make about it? I think it's in the last paragraph as a clue. If you're not sure what phrase it is, then tell me what you think you got from it that she was saying about fall. She's not just going through the process to explain how leaves change color. She's making a point about the end of things. What does she want to say about things then? Yes, that's part of what she's saying, right? Everything comes to an end. But does it seem sad when she's talking about it? What kind of tone do you think she has as she's discussing this? If you had to pick a word. All right, everybody think about a word. We're about to run out of time for this session. So while we're taking our break, ooh, soft, that's a good one. Hold that thought so that when we come back, everybody can put their description in and tell me what word you think describes the tone she's using to describe leaves changing color and falling.
8:45, right?
Yeah, we'll be back at 8:45.
Okay.
Okay, see you shortly.